The Secret Garden. Many years ago, a little girl named Mary Lennox lived in India with her wealthy British parents. Mary had everything that money could buy, but she did not have love. Her father was always busy with work, and her mother cared more about parties and beautiful clothes than about her daughter. Most of the time, Mary was left with servants. They gave her whatever she wanted because they were afraid of making her angry. As a result, Mary became a spoiled and unhappy child. She never learned to be kind or patient. She spoke rudely to people and expected everyone to obey her. She had no close friends because no one enjoyed being around her. She often felt lonely, but she did not understand why. One terrible day, a deadly disease spread through the city. Many people became sick within a very short time. Mary's parents caught the disease and died suddenly. Most of the servants ran away to save themselves. For many hours, Mary was forgotten inside the large house. She sat alone, confused and frightened, not knowing what had happened to everyone around her. Eventually, some British soldiers found her. Since Mary had no family left in India, arrangements were made for her to travel to England. She would live with her only relative, her uncle, Mr. Archibald Craven. Mary had never met her uncle before. People told her that he lived in a huge old house called Misselthwaite Manor, far away on the lonely Yorkshire moors. They also said that Mr. Craven rarely stayed at home because he was still deeply saddened by the death of his wife many years earlier. When Mary finally arrived at Misselthwaite Manor, she was surprised by its size. The house had hundreds of rooms, long dark hallways, and heavy wooden doors. It felt cold and silent. The wind outside made strange sounds across the open moors, and at night the old house seemed even more mysterious. Mrs. Medlock, the housekeeper, welcomed Mary but warned her about the rules. She said that Mary should stay in her own part of the house and should never wander into the private rooms. She also explained that Mr. Craven was often away and did not like to be disturbed. At first, Mary disliked everything about her new home. She missed the warm weather of India, even though she had never truly loved it. The gray skies and fresh winds of Yorkshire felt strange. She had nothing to do all day except explore the gardens around the house. One morning, Mary met Martha, a cheerful young servant. Unlike the servants in India, Martha did not treat Mary like a little queen. She spoke honestly and expected Mary to do things for herself. "You can dress yourself," Martha said kindly. Mary was shocked. She had never put on her own clothes before. At first, she became angry, but little by little she learned. Although she complained, she also felt a small sense of pride each time she finished something without help. Martha often talked about her large family. They were poor, but they loved one another deeply. Mary listened carefully because she had never known what a loving family sounded like. One day, Martha suggested that Mary spend more time outside. "The fresh air will do you good," she said. Mary followed her advice. She began walking through the gardens every morning. The more she walked, the stronger she became. Her cheeks slowly turned pink, and she found herself sleeping better at night. While exploring the grounds, Mary met an old gardener named Ben Weatherstaff. At first, he seemed unfriendly and preferred talking to his robin rather than to people. But the little robin was curious about Mary. It hopped close to her and seemed almost eager to make friends. Mary smiled at the bird. It was one of the first times she had smiled in a very long time. Soon, the robin began leading her from one part of the garden to another. One day, while following it, Mary noticed something unusual. The bird landed near a patch of earth where a small key was partly hidden under fallen leaves. Mary picked up the rusty key. "What door does this open?" she wondered. She remembered Martha mentioning a secret garden that had been locked for 10 years. Long ago, after Mr. Craven's wife died in a terrible accident inside that garden, he ordered the door to be locked forever. No one was allowed to enter again. Now, Mary could not stop thinking about the mysterious place. Several days later, the robin flew toward a wall covered with thick ivy. As the wind blew gently, some branches moved aside, revealing an old wooden door that had almost disappeared beneath the vines. Mary's heart beat faster. She took out the rusty key and carefully placed it into the lock. To her surprise, it turned. The heavy door slowly opened with a soft creak. Mary stepped inside. The garden was silent. Trees stretched their branches toward the sky, and climbing roses covered old stone walls. Weeds had grown everywhere because no one had cared for the garden for many years. Yet beneath the wild plants, Mary could see signs of beauty waiting to return. She felt as though she had entered another world. From that day on, Mary visited the secret garden whenever she could. She pulled weeds, loosened the soil, planted seeds, and trimmed dead branches. She had never done gardening before, but she enjoyed every moment. Each day, the garden looked a little better. Without realizing it, Mary herself was changing too. She laughed more often. She became curious instead of angry. She even looked forward to each new morning. One afternoon, Martha's brother Dickon came to visit the manor. Dickon loved nature more than anything else. Birds landed on his shoulders without fear. Wild rabbits followed him, and even shy foxes trusted him. Mary had never met anyone like him. When she showed Dickon the secret garden, he promised to keep the secret. Instead of telling anyone, he happily joined her in bringing the forgotten place back to life. Together, they worked for hours. Dickon knew every flower, every tree, and every bird. He taught Mary how to plant carefully, how to wait patiently, and how to notice the smallest signs of new life. Spring slowly arrived. Tiny green leaves appeared on branches that had looked dead during winter. Flowers pushed through the earth. The garden seemed to wake from a long sleep. One windy night, Mary heard strange crying somewhere inside the great house. At first, she thought she had imagined it, but the sound came again. It sounded like a lonely child. The next evening, unable to control her curiosity, Mary quietly followed the sound through the dark hallways. She passed many closed doors until she reached a room hidden deep inside the house. There, she found a pale boy lying in a large bed. The boy looked surprised. "Who are you?" he asked. "My name is Mary," she answered. "Who are you?" "I am Colin Craven." Mary suddenly realized that Colin was Mr. Craven's son. Everyone had kept him hidden away. Colin believed he was seriously ill. Since childhood, doctors had told him to avoid excitement and stay in bed. The servants treated him as though he might die at any moment. Because of this, Colin had grown frightened, lonely, and selfish. Whenever he became angry, everyone rushed to obey him. Mary immediately noticed how much Colin reminded her of herself. Both of them had grown up without real love. Both of them believed the world should always satisfy their wishes. And both of them felt deeply lonely. Unlike the adults, Mary did not act afraid of Colin. She argued with him when he behaved badly. She laughed when he complained too much. Sometimes she even told him he was foolish. No one had ever spoken to Colin so honestly before. Surprisingly, he began to enjoy her company. Every day, Mary visited Colin. She told him stories about the fresh air, the robin, Dickon, and the secret garden. Colin listened with growing excitement. He wished more than anything to see the mysterious garden for himself. At first, Mary refused, because she feared the journey would be too difficult. But Colin begged her again and again. Finally, she agreed. With Dickon's help, they carefully wheeled Colin outside one warm morning while most of the servants were busy. The fresh wind touched Colin's face. He looked around with wide eyes. It had been years since he had spent so much time outdoors. When they reached the hidden door, Mary unlocked it. Colin entered the secret garden for the first time. Sunlight shone through the branches. Flowers danced gently in the breeze. Birds sang from every direction. For several minutes, Colin could only stare in silence. "It is beautiful," he whispered. The three children spent the whole day there. Dickon talked about birds and flowers. Mary planted seeds. Colin watched everything with wonder. Soon, he wanted to help. Little by little, Colin became stronger. At first, he could only sit in his chair. Then he tried standing for a few moments. His legs trembled, but he did not fall. Every day he practiced a little more. Mary and Dickon encouraged him without treating him like a sick child. They believed he could become healthy. Their confidence slowly became his confidence. One morning, Colin surprised himself. He stood up. Then he took one careful step. Another step followed. Before long, he was walking slowly across the grass. He laughed louder than he ever had before. The garden echoed with joyful voices. The children continued meeting in secret throughout the spring. They promised not to tell anyone until Colin became much stronger. As flowers opened across the garden, hope also blossomed inside their hearts. Meanwhile, Mr. Craven continued traveling through Europe. Although he visited many beautiful places, he remained unhappy. He could not forget the wife he had loved so deeply. One night he had a vivid dream. In the dream, he heard his wife's gentle voice calling him home. When he woke, he felt strangely peaceful. For the first time in many years, he decided to return to Misselthwaite Manor. When he arrived, the servants noticed that he looked calmer than before. But they also realized something surprising. Colin was nowhere inside the house. Everyone became worried. Some servants searched the bedrooms. Others searched the gardens. Finally, Mr. Craven himself walked across the grounds until he heard laughter behind an old ivy-covered wall. He found the hidden door standing open. Slowly he stepped inside. There he saw something he could hardly believe. Colin was standing. Not only was he standing, but he was walking confidently toward him with a bright smile. "Father!" Colin called. Mr. Craven froze. Tears filled his eyes. For years he had believed his son would always be weak and helpless. Now the boy walked into his arms. Father and son embraced each other among the blooming flowers. Mary and Dickon quietly watched from nearby, smiling. Mr. Craven looked around the garden that he had closed after losing his wife. For 10 long years, he had believed that locking the garden could also lock away his painful memories. Instead, the abandoned garden had waited patiently. Now it had become a place of new beginnings. He thanked Mary for her courage. He thanked Dickon for his kindness. Most of all, he thanked his son for giving him hope again. The secret garden was no longer a place of sadness. It became a place where family, friendship, and happiness could grow together. As summer arrived, roses climbed the old walls once more. Trees were filled with green leaves, colorful flowers covered every corner, and birds sang from sunrise until evening. Visitors would have seen only a beautiful garden, but Mary, Colin, and Dickon knew it was much more than that. It was the place where an angry little girl learned kindness. It was the place where a frightened boy discovered courage. It was the place where a lonely father found his family again. And from that time on, whenever the wind gently moved through the flowers, it seemed to carry a quiet reminder that even the most forgotten hearts can bloom again if they are given enough care, enough patience, and someone who believes they can grow. Thank you for watching.